A crisis, its definition, a time of intense difficulty, a time for important decisions to be made. Changes are taking place. What is our interpretation? How do we manage a crisis, both collectively and individually? Here with us today on Sporting Denver, we have Amber Vanderburg, a business person, award-winning international speaker, coach, entrepreneur, and genuinely a very, very nice person. Amber, welcome to Sporting Denver. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It is so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Looks nice and bright and sunny there where you are.
Absolutely. We are here in Oklahoma, so it's a good place to be for this unprecedented time.
Hey, Amber, can I start off with asking you and you sharing with us and our viewers your early years, your childhood, your upbringing, growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually was born and raised here in Oklahoma, here in Tulsa. Grew up playing all sorts of sports. So soccer being my main passion, but I was highly involved in racquetball, in tennis, in lacrosse, pretty much anything that was a competitive sport, I was involved. And so really got involved playing at a very young age, playing different types of sports. My dad was actually my soccer coach whenever I was in elementary school, going into the beginning of my middle school years. And he really had a huge part in cultivating sports within my life. So it was a huge goal of mine to become a Division I athlete as I entered into my college years. And so as I entered into my high school, I continued to compete, actually became captain of the soccer team, and continued to compete at the best level that I could. And then my senior year, I actually got a series of concussions. Back then, we didn't really know a lot about concussions, and so we didn't have a strict concussion protocol. And so I continuously got a few more, and it really led to the decision that I couldn't do any more contact sports. And so that really did have a huge shift in my life, especially in my earlier years going into college as I was entering into collegiate athletics.
So just backtracking into your middle school years, and you did say you the foundation for your passion for soccer and working with your dad as a coach, as a mentor, as a role model, and obviously a parent. How did you evolve through your middle school years, going into the high school years with potentially increasing that desire to go and play beyond high school and into college? How did that evolve with you?
Absolutely. You know, it's as your passion develops, it's something that you don't want to end, it's something that you
Right.
want to continuously be involved in. And yeah, so having such a family affair, my mom was a number one cheerleader, and my dad was a huge coach, and they were so supportive in really just supporting my passions, whatever that might be. And so the more and more that I got involved in soccer, the more and more I wanted to continue being involved in the sport as much as I could. And there were several people that were older than me, that were a few years older than me, that were playing at that higher level that I really admired
Sure.
and looked up to, that really did encourage me and inspire me to compete at that higher level.
Hence the desire to go on and play potentially D1 at some college. Quick question. How were you as a scholar? Were you true to the word, following your education lines? And,
yeah. Total nerd.
Right.
Cool. Yes. Yeah. I've always been a huge believer in education, and that held true all throughout my schooling. I was a geek, involved in all of this that I could be.
No,
Yeah, absolutely.
nothing wrong with that. In high school, obviously, you're evolving as a soccer player. Did you have a preferred playing position, or were you played around the field?
So I did play left wing
Okay.
primarily, and then as I evolved into my junior and senior, I did move more into the strike. So went from serving the ball into scoring the goals, but still playing in the attacking third.
Left wing. Were you predominantly left-footed by chance, or not, or both-footed?
I was not predominantly left-footed, but I worked hard at becoming, being competent in my left foot. I did cut back to my right foot quite a bit.
Cut inside, very, very dangerous.
Absolutely.
You did mention a concussion during your high school career playing soccer.
Mhm.
How did that affect you sort of mentally, regards your obviously desire to go on and play D1 college? How did you make changes to accommodate that?
Mhm. Well, whenever I got my first concussion and really going into my second, third, I actually got 5 total.
Oh,
But my first few ones, again, we didn't really know the severity of that impact. And so originally, it didn't really have a huge impact on my emotional process and what I thought was going to happen. But as we got more information about concussions and
right.
the potential damage that it could have, and really came to realize the severity, it had a massive impact on my decision of choosing, okay, soccer is one thing that I love, but my brain I'm going to have for the rest of my life. So I really
Sure.
need to be extremely protective of my body and of my brain. And so I think as I became more aware, as we had more education, it had a tremendous impact on my decision to continue in contact sports moving forward. So as I actually got my last concussion, I came in and I went to the doctor's office, and he did tell me that I could no longer
No.
participate in contact sports. And so
Right.
that didn't just eliminate soccer, it eliminated several contact sports that I was playing. And that did come in my senior year. I had gone on several recruitment trips and had been speaking with coaches and was actually prepared to sign for signing day with a university, and had to call up the coach and tell them, hey, I can't play contact sports anymore. But luckily, I did have a coach in high school that really encouraged me to expand my horizons into other sports. And so I actually was very involved in cross country and was good enough to go on to compete in cross country and track and field at a Division I level at Oral Roberts University here in
Right.
Oklahoma.
That just staying involved in your physical activities for your passion initially for soccer, and then readjusting that into a different sport, obviously cross country. I must admit, it's not my favorite. I would probably have to get an Uber or a taxi for cross country, certainly for off-roading. Did that change your education process in going to college over want to play soccer in D1? This is what I'm going to go and study there. Did that change your tack or your process for further education into your college career?
So I knew that I wanted to, as far as academically, I knew that I wanted to be involved in communications and business. And so that was a track that was pretty consistent throughout my undergraduate career and into my graduate career. So the academic side did not change dramatically. But what did change is the university that I was looking to compete in,
Right,
and
of course.
looking at the athletic programs as well.
What did you go ahead and study at college?
So I got my undergraduate degree in organizational communications. So
Right.
basically, I majored in talking. And
Okay.
then I got my graduate degree in organizational dynamics, which is very similar to an MBA without the finance aspect of it. So it really specializes in building and leading higher performing teams.
alongside that, I do know that you followed or pursued the Lean Six Sigma certification along with the Scrum certification. Could you enlighten me on that? What that process is?
Absolutely. So Lean Six Sigma and Scrum, they're two different certifications, but Lean Six Sigma is more of a process improvement. So this is how we can take a process and make it quicker and make it more effective. And so that was a certification that I got and was able to implement into various businesses. The same regards to Scrum, or the idea of Agile. Now,
Right.
with Agile specifically, I always find it a little bit ironic because a lot of the verbiage that is used in that certificate is very similar to sports. For example, Scrum is actually, a rugby term.
Right. Yes.
And in Agile, we have agility within sports. So
Right.
a lot of the concepts of how do you make a team move, be more agile and be able to move quickly in different directions is very similar concepts that I can take and apply into a sporting setting, and vice versa. So it's always so fascinating whenever I go into business teams. I always go in with a little bit more of a sports mindset, saying, well, this is how we are more agile as a sports team, and this is how we can apply those concepts into business, and vice versa.
So organizations, large or small, would come to you with an idea, and you will have the mindset of maybe mobilizing that, organizing, designing the product that they're looking for with your input, of course.
Yes, absolutely. So it's very similar of taking a room of highly intelligent, very capable adults and that are extremely brilliant, and bringing them together in a way that they can collaborate in their most effective manner.
Right.
And so a lot of times, yeah, you have so much talent within a room that isn't exactly managed in the way that it maximizes all of the potential. And so a lot of times I'll come in and I'll bring those certifications in and my degrees and also my experience with human resources and sports. And we'll bring all of that together with the idea of saying, okay, here is a room of highly intelligent, brilliant people. We want to create an environment where you can truly thrive. And so we'll bring concepts such as how to give better performance feedback and how to create an environment of better creativity and how to be more agile as a team. These are some of the concepts that we'll address depending on the team so that we can perform at a higher level, we can create better product, and that we can give the best service that we can.
So it's a little bit like relaying it back to sports, a little bit like a tennis match. They'll come in with a product and we're just playing across court over the net and come up with organized design and putting those ideas collectively together. Is that the sort of thing I'm looking at?
A little bit. I think a different illustration could be that you have on a football pitch or on a soccer field. Right. You have 11 players. Do you want all of them playing the striker position? Or right. Do we want to position them in different places on the field? Do we want to play a 4-4-2? Do we want to play a 3-3-4? What is the best way that we can organize the team and place people on the pitch so that they can be most effective and that you can be the most effective as a team? Structure, absolutely, totally.
Your career has taken you you've traveled extensively, delivering presentations. Could you go through the adventures that you've had on your travels to many countries?
Many countries. So my claim to fame is that I've eaten ice cream in over 30 countries. So I'm the ice cream connoisseur if you have any questions on ice cream. But
Fantastic.
yes, this journey has led me to several different countries working with a myriad of teams. Actually, after I graduated with my graduate degree, the time really did come for me to make the decision to move on in the corporate ladder and to move up in corporate America. And I actually decided to forego my office and go to a muddy pitch and forwent my heels for a pair of muddy boots or muddy cleats. And I went to become the only American, the only female, the only blonde academy football coach or coach for the Adidas Gameday Academies and Paris Saint Germain PSG Academies in Bangalore, India. And that was my first time working with a truly international team.
The change within culture of the service that you're providing, the talking, the feedback, would it change sort of in the United States as well as abroad? Is there a different delivery of that and different feedback?
Totally. It's going to change even if you are within the United States. Culture changes between different teams, different organizations, and geographically as well. With India, of course, that was on an extreme level.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that was dramatically different. And so as I did go into the team, I did spend quite a bit of time building relationships with the various people on our team to build a rapport with my players, build a rapport with the other coaches, and to really learn about Indian culture, to see what was the same and what slight differences could be had. There was an immense difference between a little bit more Eastern train of thought and Western train of thought. And not that there was a single right answer, but there were ways that we could better come together. On another note, there was a difference in my experience in coaching mostly girls or co-ed teams.
Right.
While I was in India, I was mainly a boys coach.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
How did the opportunity to go to India with Paris Saint Germain and the academy initially arise for you to drop everything pretty much and then say I'm going to do that? That's for me, even though I'm the only female, I'm blonde, and here I am.
Absolutely. Well, I think it takes just a little hint of crazy to do something like that. Well, I think backtracking just a little bit, while I was competing in college, I made it through 3 seasons of track and field, and then I actually did shatter my shin bone that really prohibited me from doing any sports whatsoever. But I really took this as an opportunity to really get involved on campus in other capacities. And one huge passion that I had found while I was competing in Division I athletics is a lot of my teammates were from other countries. And so I spent a lot of time working with the International Student Association and really getting involved in the international community, building those connections. And it was in one of those meetings that someone came to me and they said, "Hey, we know that you have a skill in business, experience and a passion in sports, and also a huge desire to be involved in the international community. How would you like to do all 3?" And I said,
"Why not?
I didn't know that was a possibility. Let's go." And so, and so it was actually in one of those meetings through the United Nations of Oklahoma Association that someone came and they presented me with that opportunity and made the connection for me to begin a conversation to go to Paris Saint Germain after I graduated from grad school.
On further travels, Amber, we hear of a crisis that occurred. I'll let you explain to our viewers and how you managed that team crisis. as you progressed through the incident.
Through the incident.
Yeah.
Totally. So after I had been in India for about 9 to 10 days, so still getting over the jet lag, still learning how to eat Indian spicy foods, still getting
And ice
used
cream, of
to
course.
and ice cream, of course. I didn't forget
Right.
that. I was back on a plane, this time to Sweden. And this time I did not go by myself. I was accompanied by two other teams. We had a 14-year-old boys team, and then we had a 12-year-old boys team that was going with us to Gothenburg, Sweden for the Gotia Cup.
Could I ask you, Amber, where those the teams were from initially? How you were taking them to Scandinavia, to Sweden?
So they were from India. So
Okay.
they were our Indian teams. And
Brilliant.
they had other coaches, and I was there since I had only been there about a week. I was there to co-coach and really provide more insight and mentoring in that manner. And so this is their first international tournament. None of our players had really gone abroad up until that point. And so we took the very long flight from Bangalore all the way to Dubai, and then Dubai all the way to Copenhagen. So it was a very long flight all the way there.
Yes, it is.
Yes. But it was a wonderful experience. It was actually at that point that I saw many of my players. They were ordering things off of Sky Mall from their credit cards. And this is when I think I really came to realize the extreme there's extreme wealth and extreme poverty in India. So economic disparities are a very huge thing. And so it really brought to light the extremity of that, even within this trip in my first week and a half.
So the crisis that
happened.
If you can enlighten us on that, Amber.
So as we came into Copenhagen, we had one more transport left, and that was from Copenhagen to Gothenburg. We were going to take a train. And we had been traveling for a very long time. And considering I had only been there for about 9-10 days, I decided that I was going to be the super awesome, cool coach that was going to allow the players a little bit of a break. We had a few hours before we were to board the train. And so we went out. And so I found a picnic area, and we all went outside. And I said, hey, we're going to be outside. Everyone run around, stretch your legs, get some energy out. The boys had been very good, but you could tell that they were restless. And so this was a great opportunity to get some fresh air. And my moment of the super awesome, cool coach lasted for only about 10 minutes. And that was the length of time that it required for our players. That was the length of time that it required for one of our players to go running straight into a cinder block. So he was chasing a ball. They had pulled out a football and they were kicking around, and he ran straight into the cinder block with his head. And his head completely cracked open, and there was blood everywhere. And he was completely in shock and was just laying there on the ground while blood was flowing everywhere. And immediately I could not believe what had happened. And we were very fortunate that the emergency responders in Copenhagen were extremely quick, very competent, and they came onto the scene almost immediately, and they blocked off an area for our young player, and they began giving him aid very, very quickly, assessing the situation, trying to provide some comfort in this bloody time. And so they spent some time with that.
At the point of the incident, Amber, what was your automatic, human nature, for the want of a better phrase, what was your automatic emotion or feelings at that point?
So there were two big emotions at that point. So my first initial emotion was, oh my gosh, I hope that my player is okay.
Right.
It was difficult to tell at that moment. You couldn't see how deep the cut was. And so there was immediate concern for the player.
Sure.
And as a coach, I wanted that fixed almost immediately. And then there was a second big emotion of, oh man, I was trying to kind of build that rapport and be really cool in that moment, and everything's kind of backfired all at once. And so a little bit of self-preservation as well. And so so that was really my initial reaction and wanting that to be fixed pretty quickly.
So we've gone through a pre-crisis mode into the phase of level 2, crisis management. And as you said, the paramedics, the first responders were there very, very quickly. What was the procedure at that moment when they'd arrived and started dealing with the situation?
Yes. So as the paramedics did their initial assessment, soon the ambulance came, and the young player, the player's parent, and myself were requested to get in the ambulance while the rest of the teams went on their way to the train to Gothenburg. And so the player and the parent were in the back, and I was asked to sit in the front with the driver. Now, I'll admit, I had never been in an ambulance before. And so I had prepared myself for a quick, high-speed ambulance race all the way to the hospital.
Right.
And as we started driving, that was not the case at all. We actually started driving in a fairly slow manner, kind of meandering through the streets. And the paramedics started asking me about my life, just a really casual conversation. And soon enough, I was a little bit taken aback by his complete calmness in that situation, because I was a little bit panicked at the moment. And so I did admit in that I had never been to Copenhagen, and he took that fact and really ran with it. And so as we continued to drive through the streets, he started telling me about this old fire station that was from the 1600s, and this really cool story about this old church. And he was telling me all of these stories as we were driving through the streets. And I was somewhat listening, but I was also a little bit concerned about the player in the back. And so as we were driving, we were approaching a hospital. And I said, "Oh, is that the hospital that we're going to?" And he looked at me and he replied, "Well, yes, that is a hospital, but that's not the hospital that we're going to."
Right.
And I was a little bit taken aback. He said, "I have a much more beautiful hospital in mind. I have a better hospital in mind. So don't worry. Let me tell you about this over here." And so then he kept on with his tour. He kind of redirected the conversation from a panic emergency situation to him just being a guide and showing me around the city. And so he started telling me stories about his childhood. And as we kept on driving, I saw a second hospital. I said, "Oh, this must be the hospital that we're going to." It was not.
So we've got a little balance there of we're in the middle of a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I really want this fixed right now. Please.
Right now.
I got it. We're cool. This is the sort of. How did that balance sort of affect you? Were you aware of that sort of situation at the time, having been there for a period of time, thinking, it's not that hospital, where are we going? So
there was a sense of confusion. I think right. I was trying to continuously be cordial to the driver, because I think my mind was going a little haywire of, okay, well, what's going on with the player? Where are we going? And you're going to tell me about this school that you grew up in. And so it was trying to lean into those social norms of, oh, okay, well, that's a nice story. What I really want to ask you is this, but I don't really know what's going on. So there was a little bit of confusion and panic, but at the same time, the more that he kept on talking, the more, I'll admit, I began to forget forget a little bit about my panic, and my emotions began to lower a little bit more and more and more. And so he really spoke in such a comforting and a calming manner, even without realizing it. Those emotions did begin to calm. And I looked back, and the paramedics were taking care of my player. And so and so that's where we were.
Was it almost a sense of an evolving amount of trust into the ambulance driver, knowing what he's doing, and at the same time relaxing you and comforting you in that scenario?
Absolutely. Rapport is one of the best ways to build trust.
Sure.
And as he was taking the time to be vulnerable and share those personal stories with me and ask me personal stories about my life, we were able to build that trust. And as I was looking back at the ambulance, the paramedics in the back, and they were taking care of my player, it became more and more apparent that they were in control. They knew what was happening. And while this was an emergency to me, it might have been an emergency to my parent, it was not an emergency to the paramedics. This was something that it was routine for them. It was expected for them.
When the scenario panned itself out and the player was okay, going back to you're continuing your journey, did you have a moment of reflection of just the complete scenario itself to pick out those pieces of the first level of here we go to managing it to okay, everything's come through, we're okay, the young boy is okay?
Yes. So as we came into our third hospital, so we didn't stop at the second hospital. He told me it was a nice hospital, but he wanted to go to the third hospital. It indeed was the most beautiful hospital that we had gone to. And whenever we got there, the paramedic actually did confess that this hospital specialized in pediatrics. And so they specialized in childcare. And so it really came to full realization that they really did know what they were doing, right? They really did have a plan and a control within that. And so in that time, as we drove up to the third hospital, the paramedic actually took the time he stopped the hospital. He walked us in. He had called ahead and they were expecting us. He spoke with the player and spoke with the parent in a very comforting manner. Again, building that rapport, a huge act for building that trust in that moment of crisis. And really did give me time to reflect on what the paramedics were doing in that time. And really, Richard, the first thing that they did that showed that they had control was they really took control of the pace of movement. So while I was expecting a super high speed chase, just by choosing to drive at a normal pace and moving in more of a methodical and intentional manner, they communicated the gravity of the situation. And now there are times that it is extremely important to move very, very fast, and it does communicate the gravity of the situation. But this was not that case. This was not an extreme mega crisis situation. To them, this was something that they had under control, and it was a slower pace that they could take. And so that was the first incident that the first indicator that they had control of the situation, and it was an area of control that they had. The second real thing that the second real area of control that they had was their priorities. So my focus and my priority in that moment, especially since I'm not a paramedic and this was an emergency in my mind, I wanted to go to the nearest hospital. I wanted the fastest stitches. I wanted the quickest care possible. And the paramedics knew that honestly, these were foreign kids in a new country. They had just experienced this huge cinder block to the head, and they saw a huge priority in the overall experience. And so they wanted to go to a hospital that specialized in pediatrics. They wanted to go to a hospital that they knew was going to give excellent care. They wanted to take that time to build that rapport. And so they really took the time to prioritize what was important in that scenario.
The process of that on two fronts was you've put some trust in them, even though there might have been a sense of doubt on occasions with hospital number one and then maybe hospital number two, even though it's a great sightseeing journey, which you've taken up and been delivered some historical facts. That process, the end product came out with the post side of it, with delivery of, as I say, the boy being taken care of, and the element of doubt at the end of it has sort of disappeared, with the care and the professionalism that we've put our trust in, certainly with the ambulance driver and his crew.
Yes, yes. And I think that that's one of the most overlooked aspects of handling crisis is the immense importance of relationships and building that trust in that time. So often whenever we're in a crisis, it can be so easy to only focus on solving the problem and to forget about the importance of the human element and building those relationships within that. So had the driver just gotten into the ambulance and kept on driving past the first hospital and the second hospital and not had that conversation, my anxiety may have been a little bit higher, and my confusion would have been a little bit higher, and the trust would have been much more lacking. But in that intentionality of building that relationship and building that trust and rapport in the midst of a crisis really spoke to the professionalism and the expertise of the paramedics in Copenhagen.
I think it's important to work as a team, which developed over that short period of time from the incident, the blood, to a certain degree. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe a sense of panic, maybe setting in. Not necessarily with yourself, Amber, but people around it, and that chaos has evolved into a delivery of management to light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, there is a massive aspect of emotional intelligence whenever dealing with crisis. And so the ideas that the paramedics took of controlling the pace and seeing the priorities and taking control within their realm of influence, and then not forgetting the human aspect of it. Those are things that can be so easily forgotten whenever we enter into a panic type phase. Whenever we take the time, really take a step back and look at the situation fully. What I saw as a crisis, the paramedics saw as, oh, this is really just an obstacle. It reminds me of, I was on an island a few years ago, and one of the locals looked at me and he said, okay, is this a problem or a challenge? Right. So is this really a problem or a crisis situation, or is it just a challenge? Is it an obstacle that we can overcome? And your perspective that you take towards these situations, you have the power to frame if something is truly a problem or if something is a challenge. In this situation, we could have chose to see this as a true crisis and a major problem. The paramedics saw it as this is an inconvenience. Right, this is a challenge that we have control to overcome.
Collectively, the outcome was rectified by that teamwork, by the management from the professionals, and working together with that scenario, rather than escalating it internally, emotionally. So that collective teamwork shone through.
Hmm. Yes. And that speaks it speaks loads to the leadership within that team and the training that a team has to handle that crisis. So you do have the ability to escalate a situation or to de-escalate it. And there are a lot of ways to escalate a situation very quickly. In that, a lot of times it's whenever we get caught up just in the emotional side. But if we take time to process the emotion, absolutely. My initial emotion, was empathy, make sure that the player, but then also take into account the problem solving aspect of those challenges. And taking the time to really come up with a game plan to overcome that.
Right. Thank you for sharing that story with us. I'm going to move on into an area which potentially technology and I are better off strangers. The Wi-Fi and backtracking to the your India trip with Paris Saint Germain, and a recent story that you told me with those boys, and you did say the balance between communities having access to technology and some people not maybe having access to very, very much at all. Can you share with everyone the story of the Wi-Fi scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you know, we are in the midst of COVID-19, and it truly is affecting everybody all over the world.
Yes.
Yeah, and so as of Wednesday last week, Prime Minister Modi came on the television, and he shut down the country of India for 21 days. So everyone is in quarantine and isolating in that time. Sure. And so that just happened this last week. And the initial reaction of one of my teams really was quite inspiring. So one of the groups that I had worked with was not the credit card swiping jet sail across the world teams.
Right.
They actually were from a not so fortunate part of the country. And so this team really, the players did have trouble finding food and finding water and very basic amenities. And
Right.
their initial reaction after finding out that they were going to be quarantined was to find a place. I still don't know where they found a place to get some Wi-Fi, and they sent me an email to see if I was okay, because they knew that this wasn't just something that was happening in India, but it was happening all over the world. And they knew that America has been hit very hard with COVID-19. And so they wanted to check on me and my family and to see if I was doing okay. They did let me know that they had stockpiled enough food. They think that they're going to be able to make it through for this 21 days. So made sure that they did have their basic needs met. But their initial response was not to look inwardly to make sure that they had everything. The very next day, their response was to send me an email and make sure that my family was okay and that we were doing all right here in the United States.
That is a wonderful, humble story.
Very humbling.
Of potentially taking for granted exactly what we do have, and their first thoughts, hey, we're going to get on Wi-Fi and we're going to connect with Amber 12,000 miles away and just check out, see how she is. That is a wonderful story and very humbling.
Absolutely. This really is the time to come together, and this crisis that we have at the moment, it does have some challenges. It has a major challenge. It is a huge hurdle. But again, this does come to perspective. And I think that there are some massive opportunities that the goodness of humanity has been shown through this difficult season and through this difficult time. And it really has brought the world together in this time.
I think it's a time for reflection for everyone.
Yes.
And just tracking out what we have with technology. I see lots of people sending out photos of their days gone by, whether it be playing soccer or some activity, or pictures of me with hair. I don't say that with tongue in cheek, but I think it's addressed everyone. That reflection of the community getting together, checking out an old friend. In the case that you've just mentioned, these kids in India just checking out you. I think we have a lot, and still will have a lot coming out of the back of this, to learn about ourselves as a race.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to leave us with a message, and then I do want to go on to my quick fire 5 questions. But if you could leave our listeners a message out there, something you would like to share with everyone that we can adhere to, Amber.
Absolutely. So over this last 45 minutes that we've been talking, it really hasn't been just one challenge, but really a series of challenges in which we think things are going to go one way and then they go another. I thought I was going to play Division I athletics and soccer, and I played D1 in a different manner. I thought I was going to be in corporate, and I ended up going to a soccer field in India. We thought we were going to Copenhagen. We thought we were going to be in Copenhagen for a few hours, and we were there for a long time. But in all of those scenarios, we do have a choice. Are we going to see it as a crisis, as a total problem, as a dead end, or is this just a challenge that we can overcome? And so while it is an emotional time, this is also something that if we all work together, if we are like the team of paramedics, then we can really come together, see the problem, see the challenge for what it is, and come up with different ways to overcome that. And that could be calling on your neighbor. It could be really just giving someone a phone call, just checking in on one another, and those little acts of kindness, just like the email that I got from my kids in India, it really does speak wonders. This is a challenging time for everyone all over the world. It has brought us all together under one race, and it really has brought us together. And this is a time that we can really lean on one another as we get through season. And you'll notice I do call it a season because seasons don't last forever. Seasons do come and go. And I believe that this season, it will end at some point, and we're going to come out stronger on the other side.
So we're looking forward to next season in the sporting world.
Yes. But enjoying this season while we are. I think that there are some, there are some opportunities within this to spend time with your family, spend time in reflection, and really come together as one.
Amber, thank you very much for sharing your messages, your stories, your life. I'm going to hit you with quick fire 5 questions. So are you prepared?
All right. See if I can stretch. Okay, I'm ready.
I do have to go with soccer to start with. So your soccer team.
Soccer team. Okay, so U.S. women's soccer, I'm a huge fan. Cool. So, I mean, I grew up on the Brianna Scurry, Christine Lilly era, was my big era of football. Yes, I see you have Rapinoe and Solo on there as well. So that's my women's team. If I'm going with a men's team, I am a fan of Bayern Munich.
I see the flag in the background.
Yes, I have a flag in the background. So I'm a fan of them as well.
In the sporting world, Amber, which athlete, past or present, inspired you?
Oh, so many. I have really enjoyed in recent years the leadership of Carly Lloyd of the women's team. I think that her leadership on and off the field as team captain, leading the team has just been truly inspiring. She is more of a silent leader in comparison to some other members on the team, but she is extremely powerful and effective in the way that she progresses the sport. Yeah. And then on the men's side, I do enjoy watching Pulisic. I think he is just a dynamic player to watch.
And certainly one for the future.
Yes.
How soon did you know when you wanted to get involved in coaching? I know you came through with your father and being mentored, role model, of course, parent. How soon did you know? When did you know you wanted to get involved in that side of sporting activities?
So starting with my dad and coaching my little sister, that was a dream situation. You know, we had my mom as the cheerleader, my dad as the co-coach, and my sister was the player. And that was a blast. And after my sister moved on and moved to higher levels of coaching, I didn't want that journey to end. And so after she moved on to the next level, I knew right then that I wanted to find another team and I wanted to continuously be involved in the sport.
Okay, here's a good one for you. In public speaking, your presentations, if you could choose any venue globally, where would you like to perform to present your product?
Ooh, all right. I love that question. Oh, you know, I'm thinking I love large venues. I just did a presentation right before COVID in Budapest at this old theater that was amazing. It had this huge chandelier, reminded me of Phantom of the Opera a little bit.
Oh, brilliant.
A picture of it there. So that was so much fun. And it really gave me a love for that style of an older theater. And, you know, I think that my favorite venue that I have ever visited would have to be Radio City Music Hall. If they could have a presentation in Radio City Music Hall, I would be there in a heartbeat.
I'll do my best, Amber. I'll try and make a few phone calls for you. I can't promise anything, but
okay.
You know, I'll have a pop at it for you.
You know, you're in Denver, and Red Rocks Amphitheater is also just spectacular.
It is a wonderful, wonderful, almost spiritual place.
Yes. The atmosphere is undeniable.
Totally. Okay, the last question. I know you get asked to come in and speak with subject matter. On that note, what would your preference, your topic be if you could now speak in Budapest, in Hungary? What would be the topic, the presentation of your choice?
Ooh, you know, every presentation that I have has something to do with building a higher performing team. So I have a catalog of presentations that are all within that category. I think that my most fun presentation to give, I'm going to give two answers. I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Is I have one presentation on how to give better performance feedback and move beyond just saying, hey, good job. Which sounds super nice, but doesn't really give a lot of direction of what to do. So I really give practical conversations that you can have and ways that you can frame your feedback that is more specific so that you can get strategic. And in my presentations, it is very difficult to fall asleep. So we're usually standing up, we walk around, we clap, we cheer. It's very interactive in that manner. So the power of performance feedback is one of my most favorite ones. And then my second most favorite presentation would have to be how to create a culture of high performance. And here we focus more specifically on creativity, collaboration, and captainship. And so how do we go from lines and laps and lectures and standing in a line, kicking a ball, waiting for instruction? So very rigid and monotonous, which happens in football training, but it also happens in the workplace all the time. We go to work, we receive a task, and we wait for instruction. And so how do we move beyond that into a culture that isn't just focused on the task, but is actually focused on the full game scenario and how you can apply that. And so that one, again, is a lot of fun. I think that people are very involved. We stand up, we move around, and if you're not, if you're laughing, you're learning, right? And so we have a lot of jokes and have a good time within that training as well. So those are my two favorite keynotes that we have: the power of performance feedback and cultivating a higher performing team.
Amber Vanderburg, thank you so much for enlightening us. Thank you very, very much for sharing your time, your stories, and your experiences with Sporting Denver. It is greatly appreciated. Talking of seasons, we'd love to have you back when the seasons do change under a different climate. Please come back and talk to us at a later date. We'd be more than happy. I'm sure our viewers and listeners would be more than happy to hear some further presentations and stories from you.
Fantastic. It would be an honor. It's been a total pleasure.
And I'll try and put a phone call in. I can't promise anywhere else, but I do live near Red Rock, so I'll see if we can get something going for you there.
I'm a big fan of Red Rocks. Yeah.
Amber, thank you very, very much. Greatly appreciated. We'll talk with you again soon. Thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you so much. Stay safe out there.
You too.